Good morning and welcome to Early Exchange with Blessing Aiche, Femi Ayodele, Sam Oruoje, and Idahosa Osamanze.
Is a critical element of managing the employee-employer relationship, particularly from...
The problem in Nigeria is not corruption, and everybody seems to be very surprised that corruption is not a problem.
How can indigenous languages be promoted in a country like this?
Statistics show that less than 10% of Nigeria, the population of Nigeria, has have access to health insurance. You imagine if our population is about 200 million.
This is Early Exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.
All right, it's another beautiful day, another great time, another opportunity has presented itself for us to discuss issues related to business, finance, national development, and the economy. This is Early Exchange, and I am Femi Ayodele. As you're aware, the Early Exchange is all about shaping policy and advancing development. Today, we are set to give you the best of programming. We hope that as you spend the next 3 hours with us, you'll be informed, you'll be educated, and we're going to make your day memorable. It's always a pleasure hosting you, and I'm here prepared to give you the best of presentation today. Let's kick the show running with news update, and Alfreda is standing by to take us around the world. Alfreda, good morning, and how are you today?
Femi, good morning. Good morning and welcome to the morning news update on Soup News. I am Alfreda Amde-Basi. Today's news focuses on major developmental news from Nigeria and all around the world. But first, we take the major highlights. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu signs 2023 supplementary budget into law. House Committee prioritizes SME growth to drive Nigerian economy. Nigeria expands crude oil exports with launch of Nembe grade oil prices slide. Dollar strengthens as central banks resist rate cut. Meta tightens control on AI-generated political ads. Let's take a breather and return with the full bulletin right after the break. Welcome back. President Bola Tinubu has signed the 2023 supplementary budget of 2.17 trillion naira into law. The budget, which was passed by the National Assembly last Thursday, will provide additional funding for a number of critical areas, including labor wage adjustments, security, and infrastructure development. In his request for the supplementary budget, Tinubu had outlined a number of key areas where the additional funding would focus on. These include 1.35 trillion naira for labor wage adjustments, 500 billion naira for security, and 326.79 billion naira for infrastructural development. The president noted that the supplementary budget was essential for providing the government with the resources it needs to meet its obligations to the Nigerian people. The presidency has revealed that President Ahmed Bola Tinubu's administration is actively developing policies aimed at strengthening the Nigerian currency, the naira. The special advisor to the president on economic matters, Dr. Tokwe Fashua, made this disclosure during the Cowries to Cash lecture and luncheon held in Abuja. Fashua pointed out the recent gradual appreciation of the naira's value and suggested that this trend is likely to continue due to the implementation of government policies. He cautioned individuals hoarding foreign currencies in anticipation of further naira depreciation, warning that government policies would likely surprise them. Fashua, representing Vice President Kashim Shettima at the event, revealed that the president had challenged his team to expedite the achievement of various economic targets, including reaching a $1 trillion economy by 2026. The Deputy Speaker of the House of Representatives, Honorable Benjamin Okezie Kalu, has reassured Nigerians that bills supporting women's rights and inclusion, which face challenges in the 9th Assembly, will not meet the same fate in the 10th Assembly. And speaking at the 40th anniversary celebration of News Engineering Limited and the launch of the News 40/40 Leadership Development Fellowship in Abuja, Kalu affirmed his commitment to championing women's empowerment and ensuring that their representation in legislative processes. He mentioned plans to introduce constitutional amendments focused on gender equality, equity, and inclusiveness, expressing confidence that the president will support such initiatives. The House of Representatives Committee on Small and Medium Enterprises, SMEs, has emphasized the role of SMEs in the Nigerian economy and emphasized the need to strengthen these enterprises to bolster employment opportunities, reduce poverty, and make substantial contributions to the nation's gross domestic product. The committee's chairman, Mansour Manu Soro, made this declaration during its inaugural meeting and stressed the interdependence of SME success and the prosperity of the Nigerian economy, noting that without thriving SMEs, the national economy would face challenges. The committee's mission is to facilitate the growth and development of SMEs, improve the ease of doing business, and create a supportive environment to enhance their contributions to the Nigerian economy over the next 4 years. Furthermore, the committee aims to enhance SME competitiveness by shaping national policies and support the growth and development, ultimately contributing positively to Nigeria's SME ecosystem. And in a move to expand Nigeria's crude oil export portfolio, the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited, NNPC, has introduced Nembe crude oil grade, a new grade of crude oil into the international market. The unique selling point of Nembe grade is its low sulfur content and low carbon footprint, making it a desirable product for European buyers. 2 cargoes of the Nembe crude have already been exported to France and the Netherlands. The terminal, with a storage capacity of 2 million barrels and a loading capacity of 25,000 barrels per hour, is expected to export over 3.6 million barrels of crude oil per month at full scale of operation. This showcases Nigeria's commitment to diversifying its crude oil export portfolio and meeting the growing demand for low sulfur, environmentally friendly crude oil. Experts in the build sector have called for a rethink of the sector's philosophy, regulations, and frameworks to fully realize its potential as a critical driver and contributor to the Nigerian economy. This new philosophy should place people as the central drivers of the sector, strengthen frameworks and institutions, and ensure the conscious infusion of relevant Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, at various stages of the built environment life cycle. To achieve this, the enactment and full domestication of the building code are essential, along with the realignment of multiple government agencies and the elimination of multiple documentation. Furthermore, technology should be embraced to streamline processes, bolster compliance efforts, and pave the way for a more digitally enabled industry. However, transformation cannot happen in silos, and collaboration is crucial among policymakers, industry players, and stakeholders to advance the cause of regulatory compliance and enforcement. The Manufacturers Association of Nigeria is poised to harness technology to enhance operational efficiency and unlock the potential of cross-border value chains. The President's Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, Otumba Francis Meshioye, highlighted this commitment during a press briefing to announce the upcoming 8th edition of the Nigerian Manufacturing and Equipment Expo, NME, and the 9th edition of the Nigerian Raw Materials Expo, scheduled for November 21st to 23rd in Lagos. Meshioye emphasized the event's pivotal role in embracing technology to foster domestic production, support sustainable development, and reduce dependency on developed nations. In a similar vein, Hussaini Doko Ibrahim, the Director General of the Raw Material Research Development Council, affirmed the Council's dedication to bolstering Nigeria's competitiveness in the development of raw materials and products. Let's take a breather, and when we return, we take more stories. Stay with us. Welcome back. Plateau State Governor Caleb Mutfwang has presented a budget of 295.4 billion naira for the year 2024 to the State House of Assembly for approval, naming it the budget of new beginnings. The budget is structured with 157.6 billion naira allocated to recurrent expenditures and 137.9 billion naira for capital spending. Mutfwang's administration has outlined its vision and mission to focus on key areas such as security, agriculture, human capital development, public health, and others, aiming to lay a strong foundation for the people of the state. Furthermore, the budget allocations include 26.2 billion naira for finance and the economy, 22.2 billion naira for administration, 20.6 billion naira for land, housing and urban development, 15 billion naira for water sanitation, and 14.3 billion naira for works and transport. And in a bid to ensure that every child receives proper health and nutrition programs, alongside improved data management and information systems in the Zamfara state, the United Nations Children's Fund UNICEF distributed laptops and related information communication technology ICT accessories to 14 local government areas in Zamfara. These was made possible through the financial support of the USAID Bureau for Humanitarian Assistance, BHA, as part of an integrated nutrition program in Zamfara state. During a one-day information dissemination meeting for the 2023 Sukaza Smart Survey in Sokoto, UNICEF official Miriam said that the distribution was made possible through the financial support of the USAID Bureau for the Humanitarian Assistance as part of an integrated nutrition program in Zamfara state. Global stock markets experienced a pause in their momentum as several European Central Bank officials expressed resistance to the idea of swift interest rate cuts, a sentiment that may be echoed by Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell later in the day. In response, Europe's stock 600 remained relatively stable and U.S. equity futures showed minimal fluctuations. Meanwhile, yields on 10-year treasuries inched up by 2 basis points to reach 4.6%. However, the decline in oil prices gathered momentum, with West Texas Intermediate crude futures slipping below $77, marking a 3-month low. Simultaneously, the U.S. dollar saw its third consecutive day of strengthening. The resistance to rapid interest rate cuts from European central banks added an element of caution to the global financial landscape, impacting stock markets and bond yields. Political and business leaders at the Bloomberg New Economy Forum in Singapore have expressed concerns about several global risks, including war, geopolitical tensions, and inflation. Singapore's Foreign Minister Vivian Balakrishnan highlighted the moment of danger the world is facing, citing ongoing conflicts in Ukraine and Gaza and potential triggers for conflict in Taiwan and the South China Sea. While these risks are significant, there were two hints of optimism, with Chinese Vice President Han Zheng mentioning positive signals in U.S.-China relations, coinciding with talks between U.S. President Joe Biden and Chinese leader Xi Jinping at the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit. On the investment front, improved relations between the U.S. and China were seen as a potential catalyst for gains in Chinese equities. The Chief Investment Officer of the Templeton Global Equity Investments, Manraj Shakon, suggested that a meeting between President Xi and Biden could stabilize China's equity market. Additionally, Franklin Templeton's President and CEO, Jennifer Johnson, stressed the importance of portfolio diversification in the face of high interest rates and persistent inflation, highlighting China as a region that global investors should continue to consider. And in a bid to understand potential risks and create appropriate safeguards for the use of generative AI in ads related to sensitive topics, Meta has introduced a new policy to address the influence of artificial intelligence AI on political advertising. Starting next year, Meta will require political advertisers globally to disclose their use of third-party AI software in political or social issue ads that depict people and events. The company will also prohibit advertisers from using its own AI-assisted software to create ads related to various regulated industries, including housing, employment, credit, health, pharmaceuticals, and financial services. Instead, advertisers can use third-party AI tools and disclosure requirements. This decision comes as AI tools like ChatGPT and Midjourney gain popularity, raising concerns about manipulated or false imagery, videos, and audio. Elon Musk is prepared for a pivotal moment in his career, not in rocket science but in brain surgery. Musk's company, Neuralink Corp, is actively seeking a volunteer for its inaugural clinical trial, where an individual will undergo a procedure involving the removal of a section of his core. A specialized robot will then insert a series of electrodes and super thin wires into the patient's brain. Once the procedure is complete, the missing skull piece will be replaced with a small computer, roughly the size of a quarter, which will remain in place for an extended period. The primary function of this implant is to read and analyze the person's brain activity and wirelessly transmit this information to a nearby laptop or tablet. For the trial, the ideal candidate will be an adult under the age of 40 who has full paralyzed limbs. The objective is to demonstrate the device's ability to safely gather valuable data from this region of the patient's brain, marking a significant milestone in Neuralink's pursuit of converting a person's thoughts into various actions. And we'll take a short break. When we return, more stories. Stay with us. Welcome back. Amid a prolonged downturn in deal activity due to rising borrowing costs, private equity firms are taking proactive measures to retain their talent pool. These initiatives include boosting base salaries, offering additional paid time off, providing gym discounts, and even extending travel insurance benefits. According to reports which surveyed 84 private capital firms worldwide, reveals that buoyant firms are becoming increasingly selective in their hiring processes while concentrating on enhancing the job satisfaction and well-being of their current staff members. This strategic approach aims to secure the industry's human amid challenging market conditions. In a move that will solidify its position in the German telecom market, Telefonica has announced a voluntary public acquisition offer to acquire up to 28.19% of the outstanding shares of Telefonica Deutschland Holding AG. The offer price of €2.35 per share represents a premium of approximately 37.6% over the closing price of the shares of the Frankfurt Stock Exchange on 6 November 2023. The acquisition is part of Telefonica's strategy to focus on its core geographies and simplify its corporate structure. Telefonica currently holds approximately 71.81% of the shares in Telefonica Deutschland. With the acquisition, Telefonica will increase its ownership to over 100%, which will allow it to fully integrate Telefonica Deutschland into global operations. The company also intends to promote a revision of Telefonica dividend policy, and the offer will be made in accordance with the terms and conditions set forth in the offer document to be approved by the German Federal Financial Supervisory Authority. And that's all we can take on the morning news update today. Stay tuned for more analysis on the Early Exchange. I am Alfreda Ambibasi. Many thanks for watching.
Three Wise Men. Iconic sculptures and statues adorn major metropolitan cities of the world. In Lagos, Nigeria, the statue of three men designed to depict the state's cultural heritage and to usher in visitors and tourists into the ever-accommodating center of excellence is no doubt an astounding work of art. Originally built under the administration of Colonel Raji Rasaki, designed by Bodun Shodende in 1991 and standing over 12 feet high, referred to as Agba Meta or Aro Meta, the three sculptured chiefs were placed along the Lagos-Ibadan toll gate to welcome people coming into Lagos State. The statue called the Three Wise Men by many has become a major signature for the state. Three white-capped chiefs clad in white wrappers knotted across their shoulders and with clenched right fists are shown in the artwork. The images fascinate and create impressions in the minds of visitors coming into the state, captivating the attention of visitors who look with keen interest, pondering on the messages which the posture of the engraved images signifies. The Three Wise Men has been relocated thrice from its original position at Ojodu Berger end of Lagos-Ibadan Expressway to Magodo area before its final relocation to its present site at Olowopopo Drive. The sculpture has suffered severe damages over the years and renovated. Bodun Shodende, through this sculpture, depicted the highest honor that can be afforded to anyone in the Eko greeting tradition. The Three Wise Men, Arometa, Suk Enlightenment. Good morning and welcome to Early Exchange with Blessing Aiche, Femi Ayodele, Sam Oruwoje, and Idahosa Osamanze.
Is a critical element of managing the employee-employer relationship, particularly from...
The problem in Nigeria is not corruption, and everybody seems to be very surprised that corruption is not a problem.
How can indigenous languages be promoted in a country like this?
You know, statistics show that less than 10% of Nigeria, the population of Nigeria, has have access to health insurance. You imagine if our population is about 200 million, and
This is Early Exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.
all right, it's time for news analysis on Early Exchange. Time for us to review the major headlines trending today, and to shed more light on this and to drive this analysis, I'll have with me Hilda Hosa Osamanze as usual. The wise man is here.
Good morning, Femi. Good morning, Nigerians.
Good morning. Glad to have you. How are you today?
I'm cool and good.
All right. So the news is still all about the president, and we're going to start with the president. That's about the 2023 supplementary budget. The president yesterday signed the 2023 supplementary budget. That's like 2.1 trillion naira, signed it into law. It has been causing several controversies. I would like us to start with the concept of supplementary budget. It's a universal thing. It's not a bad idea to have a supplementary budget, but it depends on the need for it. And the supplementary budget has been largely criticized because of the items, some of the issues, that are being raised as far as some of the provisions being made for the supplementary budget. Let me have your take on the issue of supplementary budget first, the concept of supplementary budget first.
Well, I think sometimes we miss up a whole lot of things. Budgets are just mere estimates on what nation hope to receive and expend in the course of a fiscal year. And so it's not an actual, it's an estimation. And so in the course of the year, a lot of things can happen that will make the projection not realistic. And to that extent, regimes are empowered to make provision to be able to accommodate some of these changes. Now, don't forget that in May, when the president came in, he announced the removal of subsidy. And there had been a whole lot of agitation because of the net implication of the removal of subsidy on workers. And these, of course, had forced the president to announce wage review for civil servants. And now this was not accommodated at the time the budget for 2023 was being presented at the National Assembly. And so there will be a need for the president to look for money and see how to cushion the effect or the hardship of the removal of subsidy has brought on the workforce. So I think that is what it is. If you have looked at the budget that was signed yesterday, you will discover that 1.3 trillion of that budget is actually geared to paying workers' salary. And I think that is what it is. I don't think any reasonable person will actually criticize what is being done because we cannot feel the pain. And don't also forget that, of course, the projections were being made also, we have to allow the naira to float against the dollar. And that also had brought about some increase in prices. And so some of the capital projects that, of course, we have priced in the course of the year also had to be varied. And all these things are required. That's why you saw about 300 something billion that's set aside for some critical infrastructure. So all these things put together, I don't think there's anything strange in the supplementary budget that was signed yesterday, but that, of course, the government had to keep running. Wages have to be paid to the civil servants who are delivering value to the society at large, except that we have to say, okay, we have to wait till 2024, which means some people may not take November, December salary, and that will not be good for the nation. I think that's what it is for supplementary budget. There is nothing strange, there's nothing bad about having a supplementary budget. It's just to say that you had a projection, and based on the reality on the ground, you are not able to meet your expectations, so you have to vary your projection.
All right, let's look at the breakdown of the 2023 budget. You will now understand where the controversy is coming from. The first one is the $5 billion allocated for presidential yacht. That's been controversial. A lot of mixed reactions have trailed that. There's this argument that, having that kind of provision at this time shows a form of insensitivity on the part of the presidency, that you have to take luxury over the welfare of Nigerians. There's this other side where the House Committee is also saying they're going to investigate. And one would have expected that the House Committee will have investigated in the first place. There's supposed to be an appropriation for this thing, which the House Committee also have investigated first before it's been approved. But now the budget is approved. The interesting thing about this was the provision, the request was made by former administration, under the former President Buhari. But now the approval is being done. Now, one would have expected that the House Committee will have done due diligence. Now, there's this other side where the Navy is also saying is a necessity to maintain, the security items for the presidency. And so it's bringing a lot of controversy that Nigerians don't even understand if you're placing the welfare of Nigerians above such a project that seems to be insensitive. I understand.
I think two different things. We have the 2024 budget projection, which is on the one hand, and we also have the supplementary budget on the other hand. And I don't think the yacht is on the supplementary budget. And I think this is what many people really need to know. And when they say presidency, presidency is not one person. And I think this must be very clear to us as Nigerians. You see, there are so many authorities that report to the president. And in terms of relating with the president, they also have basic requirements that are needed. This is not a new item or something that is new to the budgetary process. That, of course, they call it presidential year, just as you have also Air Force One, which is the primary plane that every president in the world flies. So you have Air Force One, you also have a yacht in the event that the president will want to actually look at the oil facilities or move to look at the entire environment. Don't also forget that this regime also prioritizes the blue economy, which is going to be all around water. And I'm not sure that people are expecting that the president is going to be driving canoe in the middle of the ocean, if there's a need for it. So I think we just need to be very, very responsible when we criticize. Sometimes when we hear the volume of money, we look at it as very big. I looked at it when they say 5 billion. It sounds big, but when you put it vis-a-vis the major currencies of the world, whether dollar or pound, euro, you see it's a small fraction, and that is what it is. And I don't think that's a big problem we have as a nation. What we have as a nation is that we should necessarily be looking at how to bake a bigger cake, which is what the president is focused on. How do we increase the revenue base for this nation so that we can build basic and critical infrastructure that will drive our national growth and development? So I think that for me is a take. That you buy a yacht that the Navy is going to use along president, I don't see it as anything that is extraordinary or extravagant, so to speak. But what is important is to see that are we moving in the right direction? Even Peter Obi hailed the 1.3 trillion yesterday that was signed for labor because it was good for him, even though he said they are the official opposition to the government. So somehow we see that there is some convergence, that there are some things that are necessary and they have to be done, whether we like it or not. You see, the way Nigerians look at government is to say sensitivity, oh, there's poverty in the land. I don't think it's the business of government to actually determine how we eat. That's not the government's business.
But it's also in position to
Government's
provide
business
enabling
is to ensure that they provide an enabling ground. When you say government is not sensitive because there's a hunger in the land, is it the role of government to be giving individual money to feed? No, that's not the duty of government. Now, how do we increase our productivity? I keep making this analogy everywhere in the world. The last time somebody asked me that we just corn, that when you throw a piece of corn on the ground, anywhere in Nigeria, the thing will grow without watering, without fertilizer. We cannot even produce corn as a people. That does not require any government incentive to plant corn that we can sell both locally and abroad. As we speak, Nigeria import corn for feed, for animals. So why do you have a market and people don't want to work? And I think this is what people should be speaking to. The level of productivity in Nigeria as we speak is at its lowest ebb. People are making ungodly excuses why they cannot work. And this is the real truth. People say, oh, there's insecurity. It's not also all states that have insecurity. Even the state with insecurity, people are still farming. I saw a lieutenant colonel about 2 weeks ago, and he was giving me a data on his experiment in Borno State while he was commanding a garrison there. And he said he decided to lead by example, to go into farming in that region. And he said in 2021, he had about 79 bags of beans produced in Basa, local government, in Borno State. And he said this last year, 2022, he produced 300 bags of beans in the same area. And he said a whole lot of people in Basa had come back to their community. They are all producing beans. And he's having good testimony of people who are farming and they are making money. And I think this is what we should do. We should not hide under the guise that, oh, there is trouble in the land and therefore we cannot do what we are reasonably supposed to be doing. This is the real conversation. And this is where Nigerians should hang it. Not that, you see, we have opportunities, but we are not leveraging it. The small things that we can do for ourselves, we cannot do. Ukraine is fighting war. They are still selling wheat up to today. They have not stopped wheat production. We that is not fighting any war, we cannot go to farm because of insecurity. This for me is a lame argument and it's not something that we should glorify.
The argument could also be valid if you, like you said, that which is universally known that government should provide the enabling environment. But what if the enabling environment is harsh or is not there? For instance, you want to start a business, the power supply, you have to make provisions.
We don't need power supply to plant corn.
But
do we need power to plant corn?
For someone who wants to go into small businesses.
Leave small business. Do we need? No. You see, what people talk about is the areas where you have comparative cost advantage. Take for example, we need to eat first. Food security. We don't need to import rice. Custom, about 3 days ago, impounded loads of rice that are coming into Nigeria because we cannot farm rice. We don't need light to farm rice, for God's sake. We're only looking for excuses out of our, I don't know how to put it. We must look for one excuse to say, oh, this is why government has not done well. This is why we are not living well. We must leave government out of some of our crises. We don't need light to plant rice.
But to do mechanized farming, you need electricity because of the equipment that are involved. And the bulk of farmers in Nigeria, they are, small-scale farmers who are doing that to provide, food for their families. So it's a combination of several factors, but I want us to focus on, the 2023 supplementary budget, which is the issue of the presidential year, talking about the insensitivity. I think the challenge here is flow of information. When you don't have the right information, people will make assumptions, and sometimes assumptions can be stronger than the truth when people are to provide the right explanation and information don't provide. A good example is the House Committee on Navy, who are not even privy to this, information. They are not even providing now look at the way it's turning around. It's been approved now. The House Committee says now they will now have to investigate. Someone who should be in custody of that information is not in position to even enlighten Nigeria. Like the explanation you provided about the need for the presidential yard. Somebody should have been in position like the House Committee on Navy or, to provide proper explanation and breakdown on why this thing is a necessity. But for those who are to be, in position to provide it.
There is a whole lot of grand attempts by some people to disinform and misinform the public. And I think this is it. You see, we always look for cheap way to steal the show. And this is not good for our reputation and our image. And I think those who have the responsibility of being in power, especially the National Assembly, they should not be grandstanding. We should be able to see substance about what they are talking about before they throw it to the media and make it like a huge hue and cry out of it. And this for me is just simply crying for significance and relevance. What is important is that we have a presidential system of government where the legislatures, who are principally the representatives of the people, making law for the good governance of the state, have that responsibility to be able to query any assumption that comes from the executive. But meanwhile, we should be able to distinguish the presidency from the person of the president.
All right. Let's talk about some of other provisions in the supplementary budget. You have over 600 billion for security, 5.5 billion for student loans, about 660 billion wage award for civil servants to augment the high cost of living. These are the bulk of what constitutes the supplementary budget. All right, let's move to the next story, which has to do with the Naira, which is where I think this your argument also will be valid. The presidency has revealed, plan to actively developing policies aiming at strengthening the Nigerian currency. The special advisor to the president on economic matters, Dr. Tokwe Fashura, who recently said that the recent gradual appreciation of the Naira and suggested that the trend is likely to continue due to the implementation of government policies. Are you optimistic that, the gradual strengthening of the Naira is going to continue as insinuated by Tokwe Fashura?
Well, I for one, really do not subscribe to this idea of strengthening currency. Except that as a people, we have lived too much of fake lives. And I think that's the real issue. Our economy is not driven by dollar. Our economy is driven by Naira. And what we should be doing as a people is not to be looking at the Naira against the dollar. Why has this become very important for us as a nation? It's important because we are not productive. That's the only single reason. Because everything you need here, including this one that I'm wearing, we have to import it because we cannot make it here.
And so foreign currency will have influence on the economy.
Should we live like that? Is the question. Should we be living like that? Small countries yesterday, like Bangladesh, are doing excellently well. Look at Turkey. For example, Turkey don't buy suit from Italy. They make their suits and they are selling across the globe. Why should we have to go to import Turkey's suit, for God's sake? This is the challenge, and this is where we really need to have the conversation. Let Naira float. What is important for me is that you have it as a means of exchange. Isn't that what it is? Currencies are. And one of the things that government can actually do is to see how we can also tie our wages to the price index, which many nations have done successfully. So there's no this idea of trying to increase salary from time to time will naturally just die. That as the price index increases, the wages of the people also increases. And now this will make a whole lot of sense that, yes, you used to buy a bag of rice at 30,000, but a bag of rice is now 57,000. Automatically, more naira is added to your hand so that you can afford a bag of rice. And I think that solves a problem. Because we are not spending dollar here. So government business should not look at, because we have over-glorified the use of dollars. I see people who need dollars as huge luxury, most of it. Especially those who need dollars to send children to school abroad, those who need dollars to do medication abroad. That should not be the priority of government. The priority of government is to develop a basic infrastructure here, make sure our health system is working, make sure our educational system is working, and then the pressure on the naira to dollar will reduce. Now, ensure also that basic items that we can produce locally should not be imported. And even where they are going to be imported, government really should also see how to enter into partnerships with some of these corporations to produce it here. So rather than go to China to go import it from China, China set up factories here to produce those goods and items. We can list them out. Those ones that our natural resources can support. So we don't need to be traveling every day looking for dollar to go do business outside. Then we can actually create an economy here that is productive, that will be beneficial to everybody, create job for people. Because the more importation you do, the more job you export. That's what the problem is. So we are crying about unemployment at one breath, and on the other breath, we are talking about dollar to go bring goods from outside. For every single dollar you take out from this economy, you have giving job to some people in China, giving job to some people in Turkey, giving job to some people in Bangladesh, and that should not be the norm.
The Nigerian economy is import-driven, and as long as it's import-driven, you know, you can't rule
it's not a good thing.
You can't rule out the influence. No, as we speak now, I'm talking about the reality now. It's import-driven, and as long as it's import-driven, you can't rule out the influence of foreign currency like dollars and the rest. You know, the way it is, if the dollar sneezes now, the naira is in trouble, because that's the reality. Like you said,
what I'm saying is that we should not be import. There should be balance of trade. Nobody is saying we cannot buy things abroad, but you see, we should be able to leverage on the things that we can produce locally.
Yeah, I agree with you.
We can enter into agreements with companies, multinationals, give them incentive. That rather than we going there to go and produce it, they can be producing it here, creating the economy here, and also creating job for our people.
You remember certain, you know, like 41 items were banned some years ago.
They were not banned, they were just forbidden from dollar.
Yeah, now, but the restriction has been lifted, which means something as little as toothpick will have to be imported again, you know, which is something that can be produced locally. This is part of what we're talking about when we look at...
No. I think we should also set it in context. What government has done, you know, before now...
was to encourage local production.
No. Yeah, before now, CBN was subsidizing foreign exchange.
Yeah. For those items.
For almost all the items that were being shipped, even medical, education, and a whole lot of it. So what the CBN was doing was to see that you can afford the dollar in case you need it. And government identified these items and said, well, we cannot subsidize this item. If you want to import it, go and look for your dollar. Now we are at the regime that where government is saying, we don't want to subsidize any item at all. And so if we are not subsidizing any item at all, now what is the use of having those 41 items on the list? Because they are all in the same group now. Everybody go out to source his dollar. just like those people were doing. It's not like they were not bringing those products into the country. They were bringing it, but government was not giving them dollar at official rate to import such product. But now that government is not giving anybody official rate, based on what we are told, then of course saying or keeping 41 items on a list will just be amounting to some futility.
Still on the economy, the next story will interest you. The House of Representatives Committee on Small and Medium Enterprises has emphasized the role of SMEs in the Nigerian economy and emphasized the need to strengthen these enterprises to boost our employment opportunities. You know, even if you look at the best economies in the world, that of China, that of UK, you know that it thrives on SMEs, and it's very critical because these are the critical sectors that drive, you know, growth and development. Talk to us about your take on SMEs in Nigeria. The House of Reps Committee are saying there's a need to emphasize their role and then, you know, empower that sector to create more employment.
Well, whether in Nigeria or elsewhere globally, SME contributes over 60% to the GDP of any nation, including Nigeria, even as we speak. The statistics are not different. But you see, one of the issues that we have with that sector is the fact that a whole lot need to be done around the SME in the area of education, financial education. And I think that is the most important thing to be done, so that some people realizes the differences between capital and profit. You see, people talk about loans that are given to SMEs. Why is not sustainable? Because the rate of default is also very high. So that increases the risk for the banks. And so, who bears that risk is the bank. So they know that if we give out 10 loans, 6 are likely to become bad loans because repayment is not going to be as simple. So they have to charge very high interest to be able to close that gap. That's what's happening. And I feel this is happening because many of the operators within that sector really do not have sufficient financial education or knowledge. And you see somebody make sales, and then the next thing he go and buy a Prado Jeep, eating deep into the business. You call it small packaging. And then, of course, you are not able to repay your loan. Then the business itself goes down. You see, this is where we need real critical intervention. Of course, the president also had made some money available to some of SMEs to deliberately grow that sector. But I don't think it's just throwing money at SMEs alone. They need to also train and retrain, provide avenue for prudence, responsible use of capital and profit will go a long way in actually boosting that sector. But I think the biggest problem that SMEs face in Nigeria is access to loan facilities, which they may not have, or raising capital to support their operations. But again, there's also the government dimension, which is what, of course, where the National Assembly will also need to support the effort of Mr. President, who set up the Oyedele committee to review the multiple transactions, which are also very, very terrible in terms of bringing SME down. I give you one example. I started a small factory some time ago, and in that factory, I had not even started operation. The local government in the neighborhood was already troubling me to come and pay tax. SME would not even survive. And I remember in trying to obtain a CFO for the parcel of land I had, I was looking for 12 million to fund the project. And the state government was asking me for 13 million for CFO for the same piece of land. Because I needed the land to be able to take facility. And the facility I needed was 12 million. But for me to certify the land, I was going to pay government 13 million. Now, these are issues that, of course, confronts SMEs. That, of course, the National Assembly, through very proactive legislation, we should be able to handle and ensure that these multiple taxation that are dragging down the progress or the will of progress of SME are removed. And if this is done, of course, we have much people paying tax. There will be much money available to build critical infrastructure, and the nation itself will benefit greatly.
All right. What a way to wrap up this news analysis. I must thank you for sharing your thoughts on this segment, as always.
My pleasure to be here with you.
All right, we'll go on a short break, and when we return, our big discussion for today will kick off. All you have to do is stay with us.
Idumota Market. Eko Idumota, once a residential neighborhood, is home to Idumota Market located on Lagos Island. It is one of the oldest and arguably one of the largest markets in West Africa. Idumota is a historic neighborhood adjacent to the Lagos port that facilitated the slave trade, and later under the British indirect rule, it surrounded to exports that fueled the colonial enterprise. Idumota was also the location of an armed forces remembrance cenotaph called Soja Idumota, built as a monument to Nigerian soldiers who served with the West African Frontier Force. An Eyo Masquerade statue and a clock tower are also some monuments at Idumota. Idumota Market is so popular that large sales are recorded as early as 7 a.m. The market is made up of hundreds of locked-up shops occupying several multi-story buildings, with some measuring about 5 or more floors. In 2010, the Lagos State government demolished some illegal structures in order to improve vehicular and human movement in and around the markets. During weekdays, the neighborhood of Idumota is densely populated by shoppers, traders, and bus passengers. From the Carter Bridge ascending into Lagos Island, Passengers can see the neighborhood before disembarking at their final destination. Idumota Market accommodates the substantial inflow of imported goods. The bulk of import from abroad are routed first through Idumota and then on to other markets through Nigeria and other West and Central African countries. The energy of private Idumota traders and wholesalers facilitate this activity, where millions of US dollars worth of wholesale is exchanged daily. Idumota Markets, Souk Enlightenment.
On social media, many Nigerian young companies were celebrating, wow, we raised Series C, we raised Series D. And anytime they raised these monies, everybody hailed them. But what was behind it? What is behind every raise is that the entrepreneur founder is diluted significantly. We had a very interesting session, and in one of the sessions, there was a role play about a case study on CWG PLC, which is a company that I founded. And the case was written by Columbia Business School to discuss a point about venturing, about entrepreneurship, and about funding for the enterprise. And the case ended on a question: should Austin Okere take the venture capital investment, or should he reject it? Just a little bit of background. So this is a company, CWG, in 2005 that was doing very well. It was riding on the back of the Y2K that just happened at the turn of the century, was riding on the back of the telecom boom that happened immediately after the civilian government of OBJ and GSM was launched, was riding on the back of the bank consolidation in 2005 that was done by Governor Soludo. And in each of these booms, CWG had positioned and taken good advantage. So this is not a company that was in dire need of cash or was desperate in 2005. But we had a plan to list our shares on the stock market, and we thought that the best way to do it was to first do either a private placement, or better still, to do a venture capital fundraise so that they will bring discipline into our operations, governance, strengthen our governance, and of course, bring more technical knowledge. And if people saw that this company was invested in you, probably it will make the listing on the stock exchange more attractive. The issue here is at what price? And I remember that I've discussed something similar on this on social media, where many Nigerian young companies were celebrating, wow, we raised Series C, we raised Series D. And anytime they raised these monies, everybody hailed them. But what was behind it? What is behind every raise is that the entrepreneur founder is diluted significantly. So if I use CWG as a case study, the case that was written by Columbia was that there was an offer of $8 million for 25% of the company, putting the valuation post at $32 million. Make no mistake, the Treasury bill's interest rate is 15% sometimes. Now, if someone is going to bring his money to invest in your company, he's looking for way more than that 15%, given that there's a high risk that his money will not come back. And the rule of thumb is that they're looking for 3 times what they brought in within 5 years. So in our case, they were going to be asking for $24 million within 5 years, or you list and give them a liquidity event or an exit. You have to check very well that this $8 million that you're taking in, you can do business in such a way that the value of the company can cough out $24 million in 5 years, regardless of exchange loss. Here is where it gets complicated. So you receive $8 million, which is converted to you in Naira. 2005 probably was about 130. Now, whether the Naira suffers devaluation or not, you're going to pay that $8 million. Now, paying $8 million, 5 years later, where the Naira is maybe 250 or 260, whilst you are generating your revenue in Naira, becomes almost impossible. And if the venture capital firm then has to take assets because you can't pay, he will end up owning, of course, a big chunk of your company, nothing at all. You begin to look like a management staff in the company you founded. So in our own case, we held out and we didn't take the money. And in 2009, when we took a subsequent one, the company was valued at $55 million, plus that there'd been an exchange loss. So the company was valued much more than the $32 million, and plus the fact that in Naira terms, they would have owned more of our company. My point being, don't sell your seed. Rather, till your seeds, let it grow into a fruit, and sell at the fruit, because the fruit is plentiful. A lot of our startups rush out to sell their seed, and they sell it cheap. To complete that story, we actually then listed the company in 2013 for $90 million. Now, I did a rough calculation. If we were in dire need of money and we borrowed $8 million at an interest rate of 20%, at that time, Naira, we'll be returning Naira money, and we'll be returning something like, even if you take 100%, we'll be returning another $8 million in 5 years' time. But given that the company's valuation had gone to $55 million in that time, 2009, when the second PE company invested, we would have been better off taking the debt, because we'll be returning an extra $8 million, rather than 8 times 3, which is 24, that would have had to give $24 million that would have had to pay the VC company if we are taking the money at that time. So the delta is huge in terms of debt versus equity. So the point is, at some point in time, equity seems cheap, deceptively, but debt is cheaper. Especially at the early stages, what you have is a seed. You don't sell your seed. Have patience, hone it, bootstrap it, take debt to finance specific deals, makes you disciplined, and then when you have your fruit, you can then invite investors to come, and you make more, and you don't lose a huge percentage of your company. You actually do still own a huge percentage of your company. Be patient. Don't rush out to collect funds and celebrate it. You will have to pay back. Thank you.
can indigenous languages be promoted in a country like this?
Statistics show that less than 10% of Nigeria, the population of Nigeria, has, have access to health insurance. You imagine if our population is about 200 million and...
This is Early Exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.
All right, it's the Early Exchange, and our obligation is to shape policy and advance development with our conversation. We're going to kick off our big conversation today looking at social inclusion and equity. In recent times, there have been calls for restructuring in Nigeria. Part of the reason motivating that call for advocacy for restructuring is the need for equity and inclusion. To drive this discussion, we are being joined by Sam Horuje, the Director of Research for Femi Watch Media Limited. He joins us via Zoom. Sam, glad to have you join us on the next thing this morning. Your mic. So Sam, you need to unmute your device so that we can have a smooth conversation.
All right. Good morning, Femi.
Oh, great. I can hear you. Good morning, Sam. Glad to have you here. It's been a while.
My pleasure to join you. Good morning.
All right. I'm glad to host you as well. So let's look at the issue of social inclusion and equity in Nigeria. I would like you to talk us through what social inclusion and equity used to be while you were growing up, because I want us to go back a little bit to history, what it used to be, whereby they used to have this communal spirit, and what it is now. Take us through what the ideal concept of social inclusion and equity and what is obtainable as we speak in a society like Nigeria.
Thank you once again for having me. Essentially, when you talk about social inclusion, you're talking about the fundamental human rights of individuals to be included in the social space so that they can participate in community development. Essentially, that's what it does.
All right, let's look at, you talked about the idea of fair and, equitable distribution of resources, to build in nations. Now, let's talk about the issue of equity. How much of that has been seen in recent times when it comes to the management and distribution of public institutions or public resources in Nigeria?
Essentially, there's a national policy on social inclusion and protection of Nigerian citizens. From that perspective, I think everybody are included in the ecosystem. To what extent is equity, equality, and diversity is sustained is a different conversation. But there's a policy framework that address those issues. But there's a debate in terms of the issue of quality. Are people really equal? But if you talk about equity in terms of how you assess social services, therefore, then social inclusion is within the framework of every Nigerian citizen.
Let's look at the way appointments are being done in Nigeria. You talk about the issue of federal character, which is the spirit is to imbibe the spirit of inclusion and equity. In a place like Nigeria, what do you think has been the situation, and what compared to what should be the ideal thing to looking at the issue of federal character? Has it been more of a political tool or a tool for proper inclusion and equity? In your own assessment, what's your take?
Within the federal charter principle, I think to a very large extent, that principle has been upheld in terms of appointment, particularly at the ministerial level, where each state was supposed to have a minister in the Federal Republic. To that extent, yes. On the other hand, when it comes to political expediency in terms of other appointment, there's a conversation around whether, when it comes to appointment across board, whether it's really inclusive. That, again, is debatable. But then, in terms of constitutional provision, the appointing head has the discretion to appoint those that he can work with. In that regard, then it becomes a prerogative of the appointing authority, particularly the president, to choose his team. But within the federal character principle framework, I think that practice has been uniformly applied across board, in my view.
All right. Our focus or our theme for today has to do with community development. Let's look at what should be the role of social inclusion and equity in the development of community, when it comes to social services and every other related issues. Talk to Rod, ideally, what should be the role of, social inclusion and equity in the development of communities in Nigeria?
From the perspective of community development, as a social tool, what is important, once people are respected within the community and they are brought together, it becomes very easy in terms of how they can develop their immediate community. On the larger society, once there's inclusivity within the community, then it helps to drive national cohesion and national development.
All right. Another aspect of social inclusion has to do with empowerment, where several, factors or several entities that constitute the community has to be empowered. Let's look at the issue of, youth empowerment in Nigeria. How far has Nigeria gone when it comes to the issue of youth empowerment in Nigeria and distribution of resources?
There are various policy frameworks when it talks about youth empowerment. Those policy frameworks have supported youth empowerment across various communities in the country. And between the Jonathan administration up to Buhari and up to the present Tinubu administration, you have various youth empowerment programs that have helped the youth to stay focused, particularly from the perspective of driving social cohesion and national development. So there are various empowerment, even state government up to local government, have youth empowerment program that has helped to enhance social cohesion within communities.
In your own estimations, what are those various challenges or issues confronting social inclusion in Nigeria, where in some instances it's made it difficult to achieve equity, equal distribution of resources? What are some of these challenges in a place like Nigeria, confronting the issue of social inclusion and equity?
I think from my perspective, I think they need to harmonize the various social inclusion policies across the state, local government with the federal government, so that we have a harmonized policy that helps to drive the process of youth, particularly in community development. In addition to that, some of the youth empowerment policies are in ad hoc manner. We need to have a harmonized framework that address the issue of social inclusion. The last assembly made some amendment in the national policy on social protection, which address some of the issues that we're talking about at the moment. So to that extent, we need to have a harmonized policy that address youth empowerment in particular, that we help to improve on community participation in national development.
One of the critical issues, confronting the issue of social inclusion and equity is this issue of trust or distrust, among citizens. What do you think at the communal level can be done to strengthen, the trust in the system and even imbibe the spirit of oneness and unity towards communal development?
I think we need a national value reorientation which starts from the family up to the community. That again we have in a way that the trust gap that exists between citizens and the government in particular can be brought in a way that everybody begin to trust one another for national progress. So value is central. Then government should be more transparent and more accountable in their program enunciation and the way they engage with various communities across the country.
All right, let's look at the roles that, local community leaders, traditional leaders, chiefs, tribal leaders, religious leaders, when it comes to promoting community development. What role should they play to ensure that there's proper inclusion and also to lend their voice when it comes to equity at the local level?
At the community level, you have what we call the Community Development Association. They've been playing a major role even in terms of social infrastructure within their communities. You have engagement with traditional rulers. You have festivals. You have all kinds of interaction within the community that help to build a relationship among various communities. Therefore, traditional rulers continue to play a major role in terms of how they engage with the various stakeholders within the community, which again will translate in terms of a general development within the country. In that regard, therefore, traditional rulers are critical stakeholders in terms of how you are able to engage the citizens from communities. When you talk about politics as well, Community Development Association or community leaders equally shape the way politics is organized within their various communities.
Let's look at the issue of distribution of wealth and resources. In Nigeria, it's been a practice that when it comes to the issue of wealth and resources, everything is centralized. How do we ensure that it is decentralized this time around, looking at the need to face the reality of the present day and to ensure equity, in terms of distribution of resources, especially looking at the local level or the communal level, whereby each community is empowered to control its own resources and if not manage its resources towards its own development. How do we decentralize the issue of distribution of assets and resources in order to strengthen communal development in Nigeria?
This issue has been ongoing. It's an ongoing conversation, particularly from the point of resource endowment and resource control. But the issues are constitutional. For us to empower communities in terms of wealth redistribution, then the constitution needs to be tinkered a little in a way that physical federalism, which has been a contentious debate over a period of time in terms of devolution of power, has to be resolved constitutionally to empower communities in terms of how they take care of their resources and they are able to pay taxes to the center. So it's a constitutional responsibility to clamor for decentralization, which is devolution of power to constituent session of the state, so that wealth will be redistributed more evenly among constituent members of the state.
Now, let's look at the issue of language barrier. It's another critical issue confronting social inclusion, like a country like Nigeria where you have many ethnic groups, with their different languages. How do a country like Nigeria overcome this kind of challenge to ensure or to promote unity and inclusion among citizens or among its citizens?
I think for me, from a personal view, I don't think a language is a major barrier, because we have English as a lingua franca, even though we have over 250 ethnic groups in Nigeria. language is not really an impediment. But what is important is that we need to drive a value for national identity, which will help to sustain inclusion among citizens.
I would like you to also make some recommendations on strategies or policies that can be put in place rather to ensure, the spirit of inclusion and equity is being promoted in Nigeria. Looking at the policymakers, what kind of policy would you expect, kind of strategies that can be put in place to promote the spirit of inclusion and equity?
I think key is harmonization of the national policy on protection, social protection and social inclusion. Two, education has to be inclusive. Social services, particularly social housing, social transportation must be provided that will bring about inclusion in society. So therefore, the strategy going forward is to see how we can harmonize the national policy on social protection and social inclusion, improvement on access to education, social housing, social transportation are some of the strategies that we enhance social equity and social inclusion in Nigeria.
All right, Sir, on that note, we'll have to call it a wrap. Thank you so much for your submission on the issue of social inclusion and equity in Nigeria. Thank you so much for joining us on Early Exchange this morning. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure, Femi. Thank you for having me.
All right, we'll go on a short break now. When we return, we'll continue our discussion in the light of community development and social services in Nigeria. Stay with us.
How can indigenous languages be promoted in a country like this?
Statistics show that less than 10% of Nigeria, the population of Nigeria, has have access to health insurance. You imagine if our population is about 200 million and
This is Early Exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.
Glad to still know you are still there with us. It's still Early Exchange, and we're looking at community development service and social services in Nigeria. What should be the impact of citizens and the ideal concept of community development? How far has a country like Nigeria gone? Now I'm being joined by Bayo Olaoye, a veteran journalist and public affairs analyst. He's in the studio with me to lend his voice to the issue of community development service in Nigeria. Bayo, glad to have you join us on Any Exchange.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, great. Now, I want us to, I need you to paint a picture because you've been in the Nigeria terrain for a longer period. Talk to us what community development service used to be in the past while you were growing up and what it is now. What kind of experience did you have? And as we speak now, what is obtainable? Talk to us about your experience.
Essentially, community development starts from the home. They say charity begins at home. So it starts from the home. It starts with the father, the mother, and the children. The father must set good examples to the children. There must be unity in the house. There must be communication. There must be discipline. They must pray, whether it's Christians or whether you are Muslims, you know. The parents will show example, and that's where community development starts from. Then it goes to the teachers, the quality of teachers we had in those days. My father, may God bless his soul, Joseph Ayola Olaoye, was a former headmaster at Holy Cross Catholic School. He was everything. He was a choir master, he was a sports master, he was a translator in the cathedral. He was the kind of teachers that we had then. Then you have the polity, or the politicians. The rate of corruption and the rate of display of wealth and luxury that is being shown now in a very shameful way wasn't there any time. You know, when I grew up at Kakawa Street with the likes of the Anjus, the Darushas, the Edus. So we were Catholics, they were Muslims, and there was the relationship was mutual. When they had their holidays, we were going to their homes, and when we had Christmas, they were coming to our house. So there was that, even among our parents, there was mutual trust, and there was not this prejudice about the other religion. So, and then it goes far beyond that. In those days, we had Boys and Girls Club. And when you join a Boys and Girls Club, you exhibit your latent talent, whether you're a sports person or whether you can debate very well, you can speak very well. From there, talents were discovered. Most of the boxers in those days were gotten from Boys and Girls Clubs, and occasionally people would come and talk to the children about their kind of careers they had in mind. And so that was. Then government. We had social development officers who were coming to the house, who were attending to children for one vaccination or the other, and who were inspecting homes. They were actually inspecting homes to see that there was sanitation and that there was no overcrowding and that people were just hygienic and kept to the rules. So it goes beyond that. It goes to religion, the kind of incitement that we have now from religious leaders were in there, and the kind of chaos and violence that we had were in there. So community developments should be encouraged, and is the essence of society.
Now, let's look at what is obtainable. Now, I'm glad you were able to paint a picture of what it used to be. Now, if you look at what we have now, the concept of community development, what are the missing links? What actually went wrong? Where did we get it wrong as a nation, as a country, as a society, when it comes to that communal spirit, our approach to community development and social services? Like you talk about social service workers, which I don't think we hardly see them these days, even if they are in existence, but you hardly see them. So what are the myth ceilings? What actually went wrong over the years?
Okay, let's start from the parents. Right now, parents don't have time to superintend their children and to show good examples. Because if a parent leaves the house by 4 a.m. and is coming back by 11 p.m., there's barely time to take care of the children. There's too much emphasis on prosperity and wealth. And the young ones are being encouraged to cut corners. In the schools too, the teachers are not paying attention. They are complaining about the remuneration, they are complaining about condition of service and that kind of thing. The teachers are not committed. The authorities too. For instance, I understand that they don't teach history in the curriculum of secondary schools.
This is reintroduced.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay, I thought that was an aberration. Because Nigerians, our young ones, need to know about our history. We cannot wish it away. In my own time, we did West African history in my own time. That was in the 60s. But I think now we should be talking about Nigerian history. We should be looking at Nigeria. And the National Orientation Agency is, as far as I'm concerned, very idle and unprofessional. These are issues that they were promoted, issues of unity, issues of good leadership, issues of tolerance. That is why I support the National Youth Service Scheme as a very viable tool for unity, and those other institutions too that encourage national unity, intolerance. That isn't there anymore. And the people don't trust the politicians anymore. And so we have a system that's faulty. It's faulty. The social system is faulty. Moral values have been discarded, and I don't know, the religious leaders too have their own share of the blame. And the kind of oratory you hear from religious leaders, and you wonder what will happen. So I think we need to develop institutions. The church and the mosque have to assist in pushing moral values to the front burners, and we must reintroduce the Boys and Girls Club. That will be a platform for children to come around and get themselves busy, unlike what we have on the Lagos Island now. It's a shame. You can hardly walk 200 meters and you have a group of about 20, 25 boys just sitting down there, just staring at you, doing nothing. It's shameful, very shameful.
All right. Let's look at the communal spirit, which used to be very strong, and now you have a situation whereby there's this perception that government should do everything, or government should provide these resources. The sense of community development for people to come together, share assets towards the progress of the society of their community. How do you think the spirit of inclusion and the spirit of oneness can be strengthened in this age where an average, person in the society believes that government should take some of these responsibilities?
I think that has to do with our social groups. In other words, the different indigenous groups should come together. There's this idea that I know that the Igbos, they have associations, they have unions. The Hausas too, they have unions, they have something, and they have groups that they get together. These groups can come together and synergize their resources and preach this issue of tolerance. It's a question of tolerance. You saw what happened during the elections, where a certain group of people were allegedly rebuffed from taking part in the elections. That wasn't a spirit of tolerance, and we should not allow it to happen. In our own days, that was the core of social development. That was the core. Everybody coming together and sharing ideas and sometimes coming to the aids of children of in the community who have excelled. I know that in those days, the Darushas were sponsoring people abroad for education, so many other families, the Akereles. So that spirit, I think, is not there anymore. And you hardly know each other anymore. If I get to Kakawa Street now, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 people will identify me and know me and acknowledge me, but it's totally changed. And it's not good because if you don't know the man next door, that is the beginning of insecurity.
Talking about the issue of community engagement and participation, you used to have, or is still in existence in some communities, this idea of town hall meetings where you have political leaders or community leaders coming together to pass across information, to interact with the people. How much of impact do you think that will make on the issue of promoting communal spirit and developing communities in Nigeria?
I don't belong to that school that believes in this town hall. It has been hijacked by politicians, and it's annoying when you attend some of them, and it's scripted. It's a known script, and you know that everything has been organized. Everything has been orchestrated. You hardly get anything out of it. It has been hijacked by politicians, and the true essence of coming together to get information, get enlightenment, isn't there anymore. On the other hand, you have the CDA, Community Development Association. Those ones are doing better because I think on the island now, every Thursday, traders are supposed to clean the environment and they don't open until 10 o'clock. That's a right step in the right direction. But they can often go further. They can go further by checking the demeanor of students around this Lagos Island, especially when they close from school. They can help in the area of traffic. They can help in the area of security, provided the local council come to their aid. But I think they are doing a wonderful job. On the other hand, we must encourage religious organizations to organize seminars and to counsel their worshippers and to enlighten them about government issues, government plans, government decisions. And lastly, we must be able to take care of the youth. Something must be done about the youth, and that is employment. We must all find a way to generate employment for the youth. And this is a clearing call to the private sector to assist government, private individuals to assist government, get more youths employed, get them activated, get them active and useful to the society. I know that in the area of sports, these football academies all over the place now have taken care of some of these youths, but essentially the private sector should come in.
Let's look at the issue of social services in Nigeria. Like you made mention of social service workers those days. While I was growing up, I used to hear the word like wole wole, to inspect the environment and all that. What went wrong with that, that scheme? And what kind of improvement are you expecting so that can be geared towards improving social services in Nigeria and communal, spirit?
Inconsistency in government policy, inconsistency in government attitude. Right now, they have this, they call them sanitation corps. They put on yellow and blue, yellow and green trousers. They are so military that you think that they are another arm of Nigeria neighborhood watch. They are so military the way they react to the people. Unlike in those days, when this wole even come around, they are approachable, they are very amiable, you talk to the people, and they get along with them, they don't arrest them, they cancel them. But these ones are so aggressive and so militant that it doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. And the government has to put a human face on what they are doing so that people can accept whatever motives they have in mind, instead of politicizing everything. and issue of palliatives. I am a victim of the corruption that goes on with it. You can't believe it, during COVID-19, about 3 different groups of council workers came to my house, took my name, took my address, took my details, and up till this morning I have not had anything from them. So it's as bad as that. We don't have to wash our dirty linens on the streets, but the truth has to be told. The local government tier of government has abandoned its duties as the closest tier of government to the people, and have not taken care of welfare services. I don't want to talk about roads, but I'm even talking about welfare. Talking about the elderly, talking about children, the orphans, talking about health, providing health facilities all over the place, but it's not happening now. The whole system is disjointed.
How do you address this issue of distrust that likely exists between the government and people at the grassroots, where in a situation where even if the government comes up with a program to bring about community engagement and participation, there's this level of restraint because of the level of distrust? How can this be, how can this be tackled in a way that it will bring healthy, coexistence in the society, and then the relationship between government and its people will be improved in that regard?
Like you said, Femi, there's distrust. When I was young, on Kakawa Street there, we could see our politicians, we could relate to them, our parents could relate to them, and they could relate to us in a way. But right now, the politicians are living very far away from the people. Most of our politicians in Lagos Island are living in Aja, and they come in once in a month to talk to the people. So essentially, that keeps them away from the people. They are far away from the people. And so with their opulence and their display of luxurious life coming around once in a month, people can hardly believe them, despite the fact that you have to dole out money and all that. But people will still not believe, because you don't live among us. For instance, look at Campbell Street. We have been talking to our senator, trying to relate to him to do something about it. But you won't get him. Or maybe when the president is around or when the governor is coming around, then you will see him. That is a sign of distancing yourself from your people. They are not close enough. If they are close enough, they will be able to identify the aspirations, the yearnings, and the challenges of the people, and will be able to attend to them. Some of them are in Abuja. I don't want to mention them. They don't come until maybe, Christmas, yes. Maybe we'll see them in Christmas. So it will continue to be like that if politicians don't change the attitude that you have to live with the people, live among them, share their agonies, and meet their challenges.
Let's look at the value system, in our society, which is also very critical when it comes to the issue of community development, where people just see that, okay, my neighbor's child is mine. It has been the way, maybe some of us or you grew up, but talk to us, what happened to our value system, and what can be done to strengthen this value system in order to promote this communal spirit?
It's a two-way thing. The parents should be in firm control of their children. Some parents are afraid of their children.
Really?
And some parents, I dare say, spoil their children. It's all right to give your child good education, the highest, but there are certain values that you must put across. For instance, morality. A child must be able to wake up in the morning and greet the parents and greet whoever is around. In our own traditional way, a child must be humble. A child must be disciplined. You must sleep at this time. You must wake at this time. You cannot use the phone. And they say, this is when you should use the phone. You cannot put the kind of hairstyle that I don't want to see this kind of hairstyle in my house. That's the parents talking to the child. Moral values. If a child has something that you have not seen with that child before, you need to ask, where did you get this from? When a child has excess money, you must be able to ask. Some parents, I dare say, encourage their children to make money and look the other way. And then back to the religious leaders again. Moral values. They should preach it, they should show it, and they should encourage it, the religious leaders. Because now, two things can cause a crisis anywhere: religion and sports. You'll be surprised when you hear an argument between a Chelsea supporter and an Arsenal supporter. It can get so hot that you'll be surprised at the exchange of words. So we must push religion to promote, we must assist religious leaders to promote tolerance. The Lagos State government has an inter-religious something group, which is excellent, where religious leaders, they come together, discuss, and then, again, the youth. There must be social development department. When my father retired as a headmaster of Holy Cross Catholic School, he was employed as a higher social development officer somewhere. That was in Ibadan. So he used this experience as a teacher to do this kind of work. And our teachers will be encouraged to go the extra mile. Apart from teaching the children, they must be able to guide them and then push for this issue of moral values.
All right. Bayo here has been talking about, community development and social services. He has painted a picture of what it used to be. And now let's take a breather. When we return, Bayo is still here to talk more about community development in Nigeria. Stay with us.
How can indigenous languages be promoted in a country like this?
Statistics show that less than 10% of Nigeria, the population of Nigeria, has, have access to health insurance. You imagine if our population is about 200 million.
This is Early Exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.
All right, glad to know you are still there with us on Early Exchange. We're looking at community engagement and participation and the role and impact of that on community development and social services in Nigeria. And our guest has been Bayo Olaoye, who is still here with us in the studio. Glad to know you're still here, Bayo.
Yeah,
all right.
I enjoyed it.
I like the fact that you gave us a picture of what it used to be in the past while growing up. You're in your 80s, and glad to know that you're still vibrant to talk about those things. Now, let's look at you know, the role we used to have, or we still have, this kind of synergy between parents and teachers when it comes to, you know, instilling value in students, in children. How much of that do you still have now, and how much of that kind of coexistence do you still have that now, and the impact of that on children while growing up?
Yes, that's the Parents Teachers Association. Just before we came on here now, I was, you know, we were cracking a joke about them. I think that institution is being abused all over the country. I have seen and I have heard of things where the Parents Teachers Association are actually running the school, more or less. And they are in control of the principal, they're in control of the teachers, and they dominate or impose their own views and their own opinions on the school, which is wrong. I have heard where the executives, they go into fisticuffs over little issues. So that's why the Parents Teachers Association has failed. In our own time, my mother was always coming to Loyola College Ibadan to attend Parents Research Association from Lagos to Ibadan. That's, no, seriously. And the Reverend Father will tell you, will give a report of every child. Every child will be, you know, will be reported to the parents. So, and that's what we're supposed to be. And you see, this thing slackened when the government took over schools. When the missionaries, the Christians and the Muslims had their schools, they had benchmarks. They had benchmarks and they had their own vision, and they had their own way of training their children. But when the government took over, there was a free for all, and there were all kinds of schools and all kinds of institutions, all kinds of teachers. I think we need to, the government itself, federal and state governments, must not put on its thinking cap by reintroducing Parents Teachers Association to be in charge of the Ministry of Education. The Ministry of Education should now take hold of all Parents Teachers Association and guide them, be at their meetings, and impose standards. And like political societies and other societies that have been run indefinitely, there should be a limit for officers. It should be democratic. It should not be ethnic. And it should not be political. The Parents Teachers Associations have to be reintroduced. And I am very passionate about it. The National Youth Service Corps. This is an institution that I have participated in. I have fond memories of what happened at UYO, where I served. I have fond memories about this country, Nigeria. I worked in Radio Nigeria, that was a tool of national unity, where I worked with somebody for almost 15 years before I knew that he was from Benue State. We were working with initials, JBO, Joseph Bayo Olaoye. So we were working with initials, not names. So we were relating with ourselves. But when your colleague wants to go and leave, you will ask him, my brother, where did they go? You say, I'm going to Yola. It is then that you will know that it's from the north.
Interesting.
And I did, that was for years. So we had that, even after we were all retired, we still had this relationship, very passionate relationship. So the thing is that our institutions, I don't believe in government controlling our religious organizations, but the religious organizations should wake up to their responsibilities. Even the organizations, you have all kinds of crises. You can imagine, in my own days, I didn't hear of hierarchy of a church or hierarchy of a mosque taking themselves to court. It's unbelievable. And religion has gone as bad as that.
All right. Let's look at the participation of private organizations in community development, which is why we have the issue of CSR, corporate social responsibility. How do we encourage private organizations to take up some projects in the name of, CSR in order to be able to promote community development in Nigeria?
On this Lagos Island, they are trying, but you see, they need direction. I was with some elders of this Popo Aguda area on Sunday, last Sunday, at Yoruba Tennis Club, and I was telling them that, the huge amount of money being given for festivals, carreta and carnivals, have been misplaced, have been misused, have been misappropriated, and that there has to be a way of channeling these funds from corporate social responsibilities, all these companies, on viable projects. A skill acquisition center, something that will allow the youth to be trained, not this lavish spending. But they are trying, and they need to be encouraged. You can imagine on the Lagos Island now we have over 150 corporate organizations that can come together and sponsor a project. Look at the library where we all used in the 50s and the 60s. One of the governors has turned it to a DNA center. Can you imagine? Lagos Central Library. I don't know what the guy was thinking about. He just turned it into DNA center. Lagos Island. So where do you have the libraries? Where are the libraries on Lagos Island? So all these private organizations can sponsor such things. Libraries. Let's have libraries. Let's have recreation centers. Let's have boys and girls clubs where we youth can come together and exhibit their talents instead of hanging around the streets and waiting for the next Pajero to come and pounce on. So it's all our responsibilities. And those of us elders too, who are retired and who are still very active, should promote values, moral values, ethical values, religious values. We should encourage our children to pray. Just like I told you, in our own days, when I wake up in the morning, I'm going to the Holy Cross Cathedral here. The Edus, they are Muslims, they'll be coming back from the mosque. Because their father would, it was like that. Our parents indulge us in our various faiths.
All right, let's just talk about this issue of CDS projects. What you have, because you made reference to NYC, which has been like a forum to promote inclusion and unity in Nigeria. In fact, interestingly, NYC has what we call CDS projects, where you belong to, as a core member, you belong to a particular group, and you're supposed to deliver a CDS project. Now, how do we extend it on a national scale where we promote that kind of spirit, people engage in CDS projects willingly or voluntarily, they just take it up to be able to promote development at the local level, and then this will also help to improve community development. How do we encourage this issue of CDS, projects being taken by individuals, taken by groups, different, entities coming together to promote community development in Nigeria?
I think that has to be the responsibility of a national orientation agency. As far as I'm concerned, I think it is moribund, it is inefficient, it's not responding to the needs of the Nigerian society. Orientation. The National Orientation Agency can, from Abuja, organize a program to promote community development as a project and involve the states. So it runs around the whole country, whereby ministries of education, or whatever ministry, the Ministry of Education will have a department for social development. There will be social development officers made up of nurses. I even know that you have community nurses. There are community nurses, trained community nurses. They should be the backbone of these CDAs that we have all over the place. The elderly have been neglected, except those that are strong like us. There are homeless children all over the place. There are orphans, there are widows that are all over the place, and the politicians are not doing anything except once in a while they give them 5,000 and that kind of thing. There are no institutions to take care of these groups of people, children, the elderly, orphans.
Even the physically challenged.
Even the physically, and there are no skill acquisition centers where children can. I'll tell you a story. I think my wife told me this story, that now the best mechanics are from Benin Republic, Togo, Ivory Coast. There are no efficient mechanics on Lagos Island anymore. If they are very scarce. So where are the training institutions? Where are the training groups? Where are the apprentices? Nobody wants to do it. Everybody wants to work for National on the marina and earn 3,000, 5,000 a day. So nobody is encouraging you to acquire skills, carpentry, tailoring, all these things, except a few vulcanizers. The best mechanics, the best, whatever, they are refrigerator repairers, they are from Benin Republic. We don't have any more here because everybody wants to either do national or do Yahoo or whatever. It's as bad as that. The social development department or the social development ministry should wake up and try and grapple with this issue of decadence. The society is decaying because there are no values and there are no guidance for the youth, who are over 60% of the population, unfortunately. Unfortunately.
All right. While it's also good to promote the ideal, which is for people to engage in community development projects, let's look at this other side. Is it not taking away the essence of governance? You know, if you have a situation where people live in a particular estate, they provide their water, they provide power supply, virtually everything. Is that not taking away the essence of, you know, governance, the true essence of governance?
The fact is that government cannot do anything. Government cannot do everything. We must assist government. What you must assist a responsible government. Not that the one that is spending 5 billion naira on a yacht. You see, when you have a responsible government, then individuals and groups will come up and help. I know of a Danjuma Foundation. I know of other foundations that are really helping the poor and the deprived. But they need to be encouraged and so that other ones can spring up. And then our politicians should shelve their lifestyle. Those that are well-to-do in the society should shelve their lifestyle. Exhibition of opulence and exhibition of wealth is against the roots of Christianity and even Islam, where you exhibit so much wealth for whatever reason in the midst of the poor and the oppressed. Our religious leaders to talk to them, because right now there's no social coherence. There's no social coherence, and we don't respect people anymore. In my own days, if a teacher is coming, you have to freeze. If a religious leader is coming, you have to, stand still and greet him, and he will pray for you. But these days, there are all kinds of religious leaders, both genuine and fake, and all running towards, and everybody targeting the youths and women, who are very vulnerable. The vulnerable group, youth and women, they use them to portray evil, and they use them to preach devilish principles. So I think government will be assisted if it shows that it is responsible and credible. I think people will come out and help them.
All right. Let's look at what should be the role of the local government authority. You have governance at the federal level, the state level, and at the local level, which is closer to the people. Now, what should be the role of local government authority or council in promoting community engagement and participation?
Like I said before, Femi, the politicians are aloof. As I sit here, I don't think I know more than 2 of my councillors. It's not that they are not there, but they will want you to come and see them in that house, that Broad Street. To come and pay obeisance to them or whatever. They hardly come around, except maybe at big parties, once in a while, when you see them at Yoruba, or you just meet them on the streets, or you come across them at functions. There's no deliberate attitude to try and see the people, have a rapport with them once in a while, share. It's just like I said, they're usually aloof. They are far away from here. And there's a disconnect. And when they appear, they think that when they give you money, you have forgotten everything. But that's not the way. That's not the way. And governance is not that way. It's not. Maybe because this is a one-party state, more or less. And people don't have resort to go and protest about the non-performance of their councillors. But some councillors are not doing anything. Because if you are doing anything, we will see it and we'll praise them. Because we are closer to the people than them.
All right, as we wrap up, what kind of policy or intervention are you expecting from the government, whether at the state level or the local level, to improve community engagement and participation so that we can have a vibrant community development and social services in Nigeria?
First of all, this concept of Boys and Girls Club, I want government to encourage it.
How will that work? How is it going to work?
In other words, yes, Ministry of Youth Affairs. The Ministry of Youth Affairs, the Ministry of Youth Affairs in every state should be able to put on a platform for the formation of Boys and Girls Club. If that is done nationwide, then government should also communicate with religious, have a platform to communicate with religious leaders. Then number 3, government should fund National Orientation Agency to do proper consolidation of their programs to get across to the youth throughout the country and Abuja. And then our religious leaders there's a way to caution them. I don't believe in all this punitive. There's a way to caution them about their utterances and their style of worship. And then we must, as always, women groups should try and talk to the parents too, talk to families, talk to children. And our societies are at the various religious levels to also help. Because, like I said, charity begins at home. To have proper community development, social development, we must start from our children.
All right, Bayo Olaoye, veteran journalist and public affairs analyst, we must appreciate you for your brilliant submission on the issue of community engagement and participation. No wonder you're a veteran, so you've taken us through the journey from the past to what it is now, and the ideal that is what it should be. Thank you so much for spending time with us on Any Exchange.
Thank you, Femi.
All right. We'll go on a short break, and when we return, we'll take a shift from that to the issue of mental health, the role it plays in community development. And another guest will be here to talk about that. Stay with us.
Three Wise Men. Iconic sculptures and statues adorn major metropolitan cities of the world. In Lagos, Nigeria, the statue of 3 men designed to depict the state's cultural heritage and to usher in visitors and tourists into the ever-accommodating center of excellence is in no doubt an astounding work of art. Originally built under the administration of Colonel Raji Rasaki, designed by Bodun Shodende in 1991, and standing over 12 feet high, referred to as Agba Meta or Aro Meta, the three sculptured chiefs were placed along the Lagos-Ibadan toll gate to welcome people coming into Lagos State. The statue called the Three Wise Men by many has become a major signature for the state. Three white-capped chiefs clad in white wrappers, knotted across their shoulders and with clenched right fists are shown in the artwork. The images fascinate and create impressions in the minds of visitors coming into the state, captivating the attention of visitors who look with keen interest, pondering on the messages which the posture of the engraved images signifies. The Three Wise Men has been relocated thrice from its original position at Ojodu Berger end of Lagos-Ibadan Expressway to Magodo area before its final relocation to its present site at Olowopopo Drive. The sculpture has suffered severe damages over the years and renovated. Bodun Shodende, through this sculpture, depicted the highest honor that can be afforded to anyone in the Eko greeting tradition. The Three Wise Men, Arometa, Suk Enlightenment.
How can indigenous languages be promoted in a country like this?
Statistics show that less than 10% of Nigeria, the population of Nigeria, has have access to health insurance. You imagine if our population is about 200 million. And
this is Early Exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.
All right, it's the Early Exchange, and like I always say, Early Exchange is getting bigger, and it will always be bigger. Now the discussion is getting more interesting. We want to look at the role of mental health in community development. Our emphasis today, our focus, has been on community development service. We want to look at the role of mental health. There's this projection that 1 out of 4 Nigerians is living with mental illness, and of in fact 60 million Nigerians are living with mental illness. Now, let's see what our guest analysts will have to say about this. We are being joined by Tosin Imogeme, who is an emotional intelligence and wellness expert. Tosin, glad to have you join us on Early Exchange. Okay, let's go on a short break now to reconnect with our guest. I'm sure by the time we return, Tosin will be here to talk about the role of mental health when it comes to community development in Nigeria. Stay with us.
Idumota Market. Eko Idumota, once a residential neighborhood, is home to Idumota Market located on Lagos Island. It is one of the oldest and arguably one of the largest markets in West Africa. Idumota is a historic neighborhood adjacent to the Lagos port that facilitated the slave trade and later, under the British indirect rule, it surrounded to exports that fueled the colonial enterprise. Idumota was also the location of an armed forces remembrance cenotaph called Soja Idumota, built as a monument to Nigerian soldiers who served with the West African Frontier Force. An Eyo Masquerade statue and a clock tower are also some monuments at Idumota. Idumota Market is so popular that large sales are recorded as early as 7 a.m. The market is made up of hundreds of locked-up shops occupying several multi-story buildings, with some measuring about 5 or more floors. In 2010, the Lagos State government demolished some illegal structures in order to improve vehicular and human movement in and around the markets. During weekdays, the neighborhood of Idumota is densely populated by shoppers, traders, and bus passengers. From the Carter Bridge, ascending into Lagos Island, passengers can see the neighborhood before disembarking at their final destination. Idumota Market accommodates the substantial inflow of imported goods. The bulk of import from abroad are routed first through Idumota and then on to other markets through Nigeria and other West and Central African countries. The energy of private Idumota traders and wholesalers facilitate this activity, where millions of US dollars worth of wholesale is exchanged daily. Idumota markets, Souk enlightenment.
How can indigenous languages be promoted in a country like this?
Statistics show that less than 10% of Nigeria, the population of Nigeria, has, have access to health insurance. You imagine if our population is about 200 million.
This is Early Exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.
All right, we're looking at the role of mental health in community development. Earlier we had Bayola, who talked about the importance of community development, what it used to be in the past, while he was growing up. He painted a picture for us. Now we want to take a shift from that to the emotional part of it, which is the mental health aspect of it. What should be done as far as community is concerned to ensure that you improve the mental health of people living in a particular community? What has been the approach to it when it comes to mental health in Nigeria, and what should be the ideal when it comes to the issue of mental health? We have an expert here who is going to talk to us about the role of mental health in community development. Tosin Imogeme is here. He's an emotional health expert. Tosin, glad to have you join us on Early Exchange.
Yeah, it's my privilege and pleasure. I'm really glad to be here with you. Thank you for having me.
Great, it's my pleasure to host you as well. So let's look at this figure, and I would like you to speak to it, that projects that 1 out of 4 Nigerians, an estimation of 60 million Nigerians, has to live in one form of mental illness or the other. Talk to us about how serious this figure is, or the situation is in Nigeria.
Yeah, it's pretty serious because, of course, when you have 1 in 4 persons having mental health issues, then of course it means that it's going to affect every area of our country, economically, socially, and that's why, of course, you have now people resorting to substance abuse. It also has a huge effect on our economic development. If, for example, someone is not well mentally and we have certain issues in this part of the world, for example, now we have the cultural or the beliefs. Nigeria is a religious country where at the mention of at the mention of the word mental, people start to wonder what's your problem, God forbid. And before you know it, that makes you not want to become vulnerable, not want to seek help. And because of this, a lot of people, are going through issues mentally. And this can be far-fetched, because when you think about the economic issues we're having, for example, the exchange rates, the subsidy, and the issues we've been having since COVID, it's really alarming. That's just what I would have to say at this point.
You talked about the issue of substance abuse. I would like you to talk about the relationship between substance abuse and mental health or mental illness. Is there any relationship, and what could be the impact on the mental wellness of a human being?
Okay, so let me start by even explaining what mental health is. Mental health is, of course, your emotional, psychological, and social state of being. Now, for example, humans, we live in 3 different worlds. We live in the spiritual world, we live in the physical world, and we live in the mental / or emotional or psychological world. Let me not delve too much into the spiritual world, but of course, we believe that we have this primary belief that we're spirit beings. You understand? There's a spiritual aspect of us. The physical is the physical aspect that we all can see, the hands, the body, and all that. Do you understand? Now, mentally, psychology is how you think, how you reason. And these are things that helps you learn, help you build ideologies, how you think, how you learn, how you cope with stress and all that. And it is highly essential because without the mind in the proper state, every other thing is useless. Look at the like of Cobams, the musician. Cobams is blind. So physically, he has a defect, but Cobams is a successful man in the music industry. Think about someone like Yinka Ayefele. Yinka Ayefele is crippled. He had an accident and he lost his legs. So physically, he's impaired, but yet he's a successful man. But the truth is, the moment you have mental illness or you have issues with your mind, it's finished. You can't be successful. Because how can you think? How can you reason? How can you live a normal and fulfilling life? It's difficult. So when you understand this, when people now have issues, because for example, pain, I often say that pain is inevitable in life. There are times at some point you go through these normal stresses of life, you lose a job, you lose a spouse, or lose at some points your parents would pass, they'll pass on, and you have to deal with these issues. Some people even deal with childhood experiences, maybe bullying, or some experiences they had that's really affected them mentally, and they grew with these issues. Now, when people, for example, you lost your job and this is a typical example now, you lose your job and you're trying to get another job, you have family, you have school fees, you have to deal with all these things. What people normally resort to is finding a way to suppress the pain, suppress the emotion. So, for example, people take to the easiest way or the easiest thing to resort to is alcohol. Because if you look around you now in our society, there's almost a beer parlor or a joint around. So people will just go because they want to forget their sorrows. They want to quell their pain. And in the process, taking to these substances, they forget that when you start to do something over time, it's called elasticity. You now build a habit around it such that when it gives you or it provides you that temporary relief from that pain, you resort to it every time because you think that that's the easy way out. So people resort to alcohol, and in no time they begin to develop addiction. And of course, over time, addiction, alcohol, all these substances also has an effect on your health. So I don't know if that relationship now, I don't know if it makes sense. That's relationship within mental health issues and addiction, which of course comes back to affect economic development and the overall well-being of the nation.
Great. Now let's focus now on the role of mental health in community development. Now, what kind of communal support or services should be given to someone who is battling with mental illness in the community? What kind of structure are you expecting or should be put in place to offer support or services to someone battling with mental health in the community?
Yes, so we need to create a lot of awareness because yes, Nigeria is naturally or fundamentally a religious nation, and religiously we always think that to have mental issues is a taboo. To have mental issues is a no-no, and the average Nigerian, when you say, "Oh, I have a mental issues," the response you get from an average Nigerian is, "God forbid, you cannot be mentally derailed or you cannot have mental issues in Jesus' name." And rather than take you to a mental health facility or the hospital, they rather take you to church for prayers to the pastor, or rather than take you to a counselor to speak with you, to offer you psychotherapy. Psychotherapy is called talking therapy, where you're being spoken to. You know how sometimes there's a saying that a problem shared is half solved. So sometimes when we unburden, when we speak about our issues, the issues that bother us, it has a way of making us feel relieved. More often than not, the first thing a therapist does is to just listen to the client. And in listening to the client, when the client onboarding the stress or onboarding those issues he has, he feels much better. Now, in creating awareness, we need to create awareness to debunk, demystify, or to dismantle this belief that we have that mental health or mental issues is a taboo or is bad, because there's this phrase that must have been going rounds, and it says it's okay to not feel okay. It's okay to not feel okay. It's normal. There are times that you won't even just feel like, the conventional mood swings we have sometimes. When you wake up in the morning, I don't even feel like going to work. Sometimes you don't feel like eating. Sometimes, so these things are normal, especially when we have these hormonal changes, not which is not even just subjected to women when maybe they have they're bearing children and all that. Women also have it, especially when we're going through stress. That's why a man will come back home to meet his spouse and not feel like having sexual intercourse with her because he's having some issues in his mind that made him not interested in sexual intercourse. So if we raise proper awareness by creating programs, by always creating, and this is one, the churches are actually helping, or maybe let me say non-for-profit organizations are actually helping in this regard. And there are associations, there are organizations, mental health organizations that are actually working in this regard. But what we need is more awareness. The more awareness that goes out there, people will begin to dismantle this belief that it's not okay to feel it's wrong to have mental health issues. So the average Nigerian will understand that when I do not feel okay, it's okay to feel like that once in a while, and it will be easier for them to seek support. It will be easier for them to speak about their issues. So I think that's one major thing we need to work on, that awareness. And then we also need to dismantle this stigmatization. We need to work on the stigmatization that people usually the stigma surrounding mental health issues, because I think that's the major problem that we have in this part of the world. In more developed nations, the moment you even, if, for example, you're at the workplace and you just tell your boss or your employer that you're not feeling well, your boss will be really concerned and say, "Oh, do you need a week leave? Do you need to go home? Do you understand?" But this part of the world, we want you to even work on that duress. We want you to work on that stress. We don't care if you're suffering emotional issues, or we just want you to keep working. So if these things can be put in place, certainly things will begin to change in the society.
Let's look at the rural areas where largely people do not have access to healthcare, the conventional healthcare. Now we're talking about mental wellness. We're talking about the role it's going to play in community development. What kind of facilities can be put in place at the communal level to ensure that people get help when they need, assistance when it comes to mental illness?
So naturally, ideally, every hospital should have a section for mental health. It's just ideal because, of course, there are different sections in a hospital. So ideally, that should even be there. But like I said earlier on, the reason why people would not go to a psychiatrist or go to a counselor or go to a therapist is because of the stigma surrounding it. So I think that, yes, it's important for communities, and this is where this is not the federal government now, this is the local government, because the local governments are the ones who are closest to the individuals. You understand? It's not the federal level or the state level, but the local governments, those in our communities. We should have, for example, there's something called mental health first aid. Just like you have the usual first aid when maybe someone, like in every home now, you should have a first aid. There should also be a mental health first aid. There should be a helpline that you reach out to when you do not feel well. So for example, in developed nations, you have an emergency, you dial 911. There are also hotlines that you can also dial to seek help. So I think in the community level, first things first, of course, in villages or rural areas, they may not be so educated. They need proper education at that level. And that's where you now need individuals who would be posted to these areas, experts, counselors, therapists, psychiatrists, who can go and go to these communities and create proper awareness, educate them. Because at that level, of course, they are ignorant. they are completely ignorant, and the people that are going through even worse over there. And because of the ignorance, they don't even know these issues exist. You just hear that someone slumped and died. This person, something happened to this person, and all that. So I think at those areas, um, you need proper awareness in those areas for people in those vicinities in rural areas to be well educated. This could also, I think, even for example, the youth for the NYSC, those going on NYSC, some of them, for example, be posted to communities for them to, work on this particular initiative addressing the rural communities on mental health. So, like I said, it is we need a proper we need proper awareness all over the nation, especially, of course, in those rural areas, because those ones, of course, they are oblivious of this thing. And you see, what mental health has been on for as since the history of time. But I think we started facing the realities during, I think, maybe a few months before COVID, when people started jumping off Third Mainland Bridge. That's when it became a reality, started dawning on us that mental health is a real issue. So I quite agree with you.
All right, since we're talking about community development, let's look at what role the local government authority should play in promoting, mental wellness as far as community is concerned. What kind of structure would you expect a local authority to put in place in order to promote mental wellness in a community?
Okay, so we still so it still boils down to first things first, the community leader, the local government chairman, and the like, creating or putting programs in place to create awareness, creating programs, youth programs, even that of course adults can attend, the elderly can attend. You know how people this what do they call them? This you know how people go to each homes to vaccinate children, kids. You can have a group of people go around to communities, create proper awareness, go meet them, because sometimes you see people who not attend these programs because they do not believe in it, except maybe when they hear they are sharing palliatives. So yes, if such an initiative can put in place where the members or this group of people reach out to communities and create this proper awareness, then when the awareness is created, a facility should also be created in each community where people can go and meet experts, go and meet counselors, psychiatrists, and counselors, and explain whatever it is they're going through. And of course, proper infrastructure needs now to be put in place for people to have access to the required drugs, the required therapy at almost little or no cost. Because sometimes, of course, when you cannot even afford these things, do not come, they're not cheap. So it can be quite expensive. And when people think about the cost, of course, they won't even think about that option. And that's why you have people go on self-medication as opposed to going to the hospital. But if you think about Nigeria as a nation, the health sector is a major challenge that we have. And that's why you see a lot of, we have the brain drain in this society, in this country is really high. There are a lot of people now traveling out of the country, So if that can be addressed, proper awareness, proper infrastructure being put in place, programs being created periodically, 3 months, people reaching out to people at their communities sincerely, it will create the awareness and it will make people start to come out to ensure that they get the proper mental health care that they need. So I think that for the leaders, they have to believe in this thing. And when they believe in this thing, of course, they'll go all out to ensure that they do the necessary things. So ensure that these facilities are being put in place. So like I said, fundamentally, Nigeria is a country that has this religious belief that mental health is a no-no. It is forbidden for you to have mental health issues. But if you can debunk, if you can dismantle this belief, primarily, And by creating proper awareness, creating programs that would, change the mindset of people, then I believe that the changes would not begin to work. So that's it. We just
All
need
right.
more, we need more devotion. We need more dedication to the health care of our nation. Because even naturally or primarily, even access to healthcare is like a luxury in Nigeria. That's why you have a lot of people, emergency cases, they would rather seek, to go to the pharmacy as opposed to go to the hospital because the cost. And then we get to maybe for emergency cases, you get to the hospital, they are seeking a police report or they are making demands that at that point cannot be met. And then you see people just naturally, that desire or that initiative to go to the hospital dies. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done.
Great. Let's look at the issue of the mental health bill, which was signed into law early this year. How much of impact has this been on the issue of promoting, the awareness about mental health? And then has it gone further to tackle the issue of knowledge gap when it comes to the issue of mental health in Nigeria?
There was I heard about, I think it's true though, where I think there was this policy, or I don't know what it's called, that was passed that if you're caught trying to commit suicide, then you are going to be subjected to a jail term. I think sincerely that's ridiculous to start with. For someone for someone who is attempting suicide, that such a person has even given up. Such a person has quitted on life naturally. So that person has even taken the courage or taking the bull by the horn to even take his or her own life. And then when such a person is caught, or such a person is prevented, caught, you now subject that person to a jail term. I think that's ridiculous. So you see, our policies, I think we need to look into our policies once again to ensure that you see that we're not even these people who we're trying to save, we're not even adding further pain or adding further issues to them. Because someone has given up on life, and then you sentence this person to jail, or you sentence this person to jail, then you're only adding to that person's problem. It's only a matter of time that this person would even commit that suicide, even in jail. I know that yes, there are measures even within the correctional centers that ensure that people do not commit suicide, but it worsens the problem. So I think that we need to work more on the policies. We need to work more on ensuring that we are not doing more harm than good to the average Nigerian out there. That's what I think, in my opinion.
Before we wrap up, I would like you, as an expert, to talk about what people need to do in order to be able to manage their mental health. It's important to give tips on how to manage mental health so that somehow prevention can be better than cure. So what are your tips?
Okay, so yes, there are quite a lot of tips. First things first is about there's something called cognitive reframing in psychology, and it essentially means you changing changing the meaning that you give to events. There's a saying that nothing means anything except the meaning you give to it. So it's not our issues that actually gives us stress. It's the mental interpretation we give these issues. So for example, you lose a job. You could change your perception about it. You could tell yourself that perhaps God wants me to get another job. God wants me to move on from that particular job. So when we change the way we see things, there's a saying that when you change the way you see things, so you change the way you look at things that you look at will change. Another thing again is, so that first thing is about changing the perception we give things. Secondly, how often do we truly rest? Because you see, sleep are highly underrated. The average Nigerian, even when he's on vacation, is thinking of a side hustle, is thinking of a way to keep making money. We don't rest. The nature of the way the system works, you do not even 9 to 5. Anyway, sometimes it's 8 to maybe 6. You're in traffic all through to maybe 9, 10 p.m. You get home, perhaps there's no electricity at home, and for some reason you don't get that proper rest. The next day you are out again trying to, find your daily bread. Rest needs to, we need to start having quality rest. Take time to sleep well, take time to rest well. That's another thing. Another thing again is we need to learn to onboard. We need to find trusted people within our circle that we can speak to about our issues. We may not be able to go to the counselor, to the therapist and all that, but there are people within your circle that you can onboard them, you can speak to, you can share your issues, you can get that social support. That's why you see during Christmas, people are often so happy because of the fact that people know that it's a period where they will meet loved ones, they will unite, they will rest, and again, be free from the stresses of life. And it's all about, I remember during COVID when the phrase, the World Health Organization came up with this phrase, social distancing, and then they had to change it to physical distancing because you see, we're social beings, and that social interaction we cannot do without it. And that's why if you place a man in solitary confinement, a man who is in prison, solitary confinement, it will even kill him even more than just imprisoning him because that social interaction is very important, and that's why we need it. And if you look at the kind of society we live in, Owambe's, partying, social interaction, all these things really helps. And I would really advocate that, yes, we indulge in more of that because you see, it really helps us, ease the stresses of our lives. And there are a lot of other number of strategies. I think finally, I'll just speak about focusing on the good side of things because the truth is, if you look around you, you always see negativities. But if you discipline and program your mind to focus on the positive things around you, society, it would really help you in faring better. It will help you in managing yourselves and miss the issues or the things that actually stresses us. So focus on this. There's always something good around you to see. Being alive is something to be grateful for. Being able to move freely in your environment, access to food, clean water, all these things are things that we should be thankful for. So we should always just, complain and focus on the negative things, but also think about the positive things and be thankful about them. So I think these are just good enough to start with. Thank you very much.
Missions, we must let you go now. We must thank you, Tosin, for your time, for speaking on the role of mental health in community development in Nigeria. No doubt your submissions have been brilliant, and we want to thank you for spending time with us on the next thing this morning.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right. We've been looking at the role of mental health in community development. Tosin, the expert, has said nothing as bad or good. It depends on the interpretation you give to it. So it's important for us to take care of our mental health, since we have this projection that 1 out of 4 Nigerians has to do with the issue of mental illness in one way or the other. And the projection is 60 million Nigerians are battling with mental illness, which is why it's important for us to talk about it. On that note, we'll call it a wrap on Early Extinct. Don't forget, you can do a catch-up on our YouTube channel, and you can also go on our social media platforms to share your view, to lend your voice on the subject we've discussed today. I am Femi Ayodele. Bye for now.